Fundamentalist Christian radio host Brian Fisher took a victory lap after Kavanaugh was placed on the Supreme Court. Take a look at this.
Saturday was the best day in American politics since World War II. I repeat, Saturday was the best day in American politics. I'm not saying it's the best day in American history or the best day for whatever, but it was the best day in American politics since the end of World War II. And I explained that in the column. And, there's a lot to celebrate here if you're a Brett Kavanaugh fan, as I am, as we are. And he was confirmed to the Supreme Court on Saturday, despite a campaign against him that was vicious, and it was cruel, and it was slanderous. I believe the demons of hell under Satan's direction threw every single piece of weaponry, every single piece of firepower that they had, threw it into this battle to take out Brett Kavanaugh. They wanted him not just defeated, they wanted him destroyed. I believe it represented a victory of Jesus Christ over Satan and the powers of darkness and evil in the unseen world. I suggested at the time that the spiritual warfare that was directed against Judge Kavanaugh, I believe, was as intense as anything we have witnessed in the last several decades. It was as if all the demons of hell had been summoned by Satan and ordered to attack this good man in a concerted effort to destroy him. And I believe, thanks to the faithful, committed saints who released the power of God against the powers of darkness through focused and persistent prayer, victory was seized, victory was snatched out of the jaws of defeat.
I just need everybody to understand that he's being literal there. So he's not speaking in as a metaphor. He believes exactly what he's telling you. He's saying saints released the power of God to get Brett Kavanaugh approved, and demons of hell under Satan's direction were trying to make sure Kavanaugh does not get on the Supreme Court. That's what he believes. So I need you to put yourself in Brian Fisher's shoes for a second, as terrifying as that may be. This is very close to being clinically insane. I'm not kidding. I mean, the idea that, okay, so let's grant him, and I shouldn't because I don't agree with this, but let's grant him that not only is there a God, but it's the God of his exact religion. And it's the God of his exact religion, and it happens to have all of his exact beliefs. This God is sitting up there in heaven, looking around. He's like, well, sure, I see people. I like how that's my God voice. I see young kids with leukemia. I see natural disasters on the rise. I see starvation. I see genocide of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. I see genocide in Yemen and a cholera outbreak. I see AIDS. I see cancer. But let me tell you what I care deeply about more than anything right now. I don't want to fix those problems. Let's make sure we get Rapey McRapington on the Supreme Court. Yes. Yes. To be fair to Brian Fisher, he doesn't, obviously he would argue Kavanaugh's not guilty of those accusations. So let's give him that too. God cares that much about the Supreme Court in the United States of America. I always find these guys are so egocentric. Like really, they're like children if you think about it. They're like everything revolves around them. So let me ask you a question. Does God care about the election in Brazil with Bolsonaro? Does he care about that? Does he care about what's happening in Burundi right now? How about New Zealand? Show New Zealand some love. Does he care about that? No. Please. I only care about what happens in the United States of America. Haven't you seen? They have Kanye in the U.S. He's a genius. So there's a sky wizard who reads your thoughts and controls everything. He's down with letting cancer kill kids, but he had to intervene in order to get Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. That's what he cares about. Because, by the way, God, for those of you who don't know, sides with corporations 87% of the time, as Brett Kavanaugh does. That's what God is very anti-labor protections, very against unions, doesn't want people to have health care, because Kavanaugh thinks all of Obamacare is unconstitutional. So if there's one thing Brian Fisher knows God believes, he thinks too many people have health care. How can we make more people go bankrupt from medical bills? That's what God cares about. He said it's the best day in American politics since World War II. Listen, putting aside like all the things we could say from a progressive perspective to counter that, go from a conservative perspective. What about when bin Laden was killed? No, bin Laden being killed is not as good and not as positive as fucking entitled prep school prick Brett Kavanaugh being put on the Supreme Court. The demons of hell under Satan's direction are opposing Brett Kavanaugh. Life must be very interesting when everything that you and your side does is angelic and backed by God and Jesus, and everything the other side does is demonic and backed by Satan. I mean, imagine living in that black and white of a world. It's just so silly. How do you believe that? But I don't doubt it. I think he believes it. And the funniest thing is, you do know the subtext of what he's talking about there. Abortion. So he knows Kavanaugh. There's evidence to suggest Kavanaugh is really going to be an anti-abortion justice, which means you have a solid conservative Supreme Court now, which means there's a lot of issues where we're in trouble. But he thinks, anything for the anti-abortion movement. I don't care anything else about him as long as he's anti-abortion. That's like pro-God. This is what he's thinking. And here's the craziest thing. The Bible is actually pro-abortion. That's true. There's a portion of the Bible where they talk about how if your wife cheats on you, she should drink bitter water. Bitter water is this poison that makes you miscarry, also known as have an abortion. And they say that if your wife actually has the abortion, that's okay because it was the guy she cheated on you's baby. It was his fetus. So it's good that you had the abortion, but if she drinks it and everything's fine, that was your baby. So it's all good. So in other words, if your wife cheats on you, the Bible says she should have an abortion. So this guy who believes so deeply in his religion doesn't even know what's in his Bible.